the world in which you exist within, there's so many questions about it. There's a flood, almost drowning out of frequencies with regards to trying to establish the near-death experience, or what is death really about, or where do we go, what do we experience, why do we do this, why do we do that, who are we, etc., etc. I mean, it's like overkill and questioning, and yet I find very, very few, if some, that really explore this internally. Now, let me just remind you that this body of work that I'm going to be presenting to you is something that's been sitting with me for a while, and I've been trying to find ways to bring it across in as best as I can, but I think there's nothing as better, as good as just doing it straight, head first, head along, head on. You know how it goes. So I've been given a few questions from people and a person that I've recently communicated with, and these questions have been greatly to do with the current situation or the scenario that's been going on in the world as it is, the realm dynamics. And really, I want to shorten it down. I've given on my website, I've posted all the questions and my answers on there. It's called Deep Stuff. And I urge you to take the time to actually read all of the answers and the questions that were asked. And then, provided that you will understand then what really everything is about. And so the first question that was asked to me was, what is astral traveling exactly, and what was my first time doing it? So I'm going to tell you. The first time that I've experienced astral traveling was when I was a child, and I was awake when it happened. And that was when I was with my family at some business convention where my dad used to be doing his business transactions. And I had become so bored and so desiring to go outdoors to feel the outdoor experience, because I needed to escape. So much so that I essentially ventured out without leaving my body, without physically moving out of the realm, out of the situation. I was sitting there, and I think I just kicked back and literally left myself. And the only person that can verify that is my sister, who saw me leaving through the door without opening the door outdoors. And I was around 8 years old when that happened. And I had realized that you can astral travel. The concept about astral traveling is so heavily commercialized and poisoned, so that you would never really understand the true meaning of it. I would use the example of daydreaming with the intention of passion, or the urge to really go from one point to another point. And if you think of someone or feel the connection, let's say you use the love connection, you will find yourself being drawn to that person to the point where you're actually experiencing a tactile connection through your physical form, your vessel, your heart, perhaps, whatever, depend on what it is. And that is the first form. Let's say daydreaming is the first form of the preliminary experience of astral traveling. And I think it would be best to be understood that commonly the understanding of astral traveling is, like I said, very much so that you are locked in your body and you have to do all kinds of rituals and listen to certain tapes to put you in a certain frequency, etc., etc., etc. When in actual fact, it really is about what is within you. It always is. And so the journey towards understanding that experience really led me to investigate a lot more deeper things, such as then attempting it deliberately through nighttime, and while I was close to sleep time. There is no real hard and fast rule about how to do that either. As I've said, there's so much misconceptions and voodoo drama, mystical bullshit that surrounds something that is inherently natural within your consciousness, within you. I think before I even start off, I'm taking you with me into the deep end right now and telling you that there's material documented by the Greeks some 8,000 years or many thousands of years before Christ was even the first presentation of Christianity or early Judaism or whatever. And it was a book that was written by Homer about the Odyssey. And I would urge you to find that book, to actually read it through, read all of the pages in the book. I'd only discovered the book many years later in my adult years when I started to investigate philosophy and the Greeks. And it really had to do with me exploring who I was at the time, or who I was wanting to understand what I was at the time. And it's very clearly put out, very, very concretely, which is accurate by my findings, by my personal investigations, because when I find something, I will investigate it internally as well as in whatever way it requires me to investigate. And so I will then come to that experience myself, and I will experiment with it until I understand it. And then I will be able to talk about it, because that is my experience then. And that is how I operate. And that is how I present most of all the work that I do on my channel and off channel. And so in that work, there is a piece of material that is written where it's explained that this world is essentially dead. This dream that I had reminded me of that book that I read about Homer, where it was explained that the world that you live within is really dead to your spirit. And I'm not saying this in a doom gloom way. I'm saying that it is only as it exists within the confinements of what it exists within. I'll explain a little bit later how it came about and why the concept is the way that it is, if you have the patience and the temperance to sit through the material. However, I do want to urge you and suggest to you that it will be a lengthy video, so take your time and listen to it in pieces and chapters and whatever. I really don't care, as long as you follow where I'm going with what I'm trying to present, and that you understand perhaps what this channel is all about. The world in which we exist within is founded in the material realm, which is perhaps a simulated experience for individuals. It is also given to the Son of Man to manage, control, rule over, perhaps to bring demigods into existence so that it can operate and control men. And when I say men, this is not related to only masculine, but men as in the plural word for humankind. And the most interesting part of the chapter, which I'll read to you in a second, but mainly they come to the same conclusion, and this is before Judaism, just before the Hebrew text, communication, language, and all of those things came into about. And it explained that the man had lost his friend, and he had died, and he was feeling lonely, and he wanted to find out how to get to his friend while his friend was traversing to the underworld. There's a lot to that, the underworld, because the underworld, according to how it is presented, is a realm which is a shadow of this world. Because you are looking at it from the perspective of where you stand, you will see it as the underworld. But if you're on that side, or you are in the side of which you have transitioned to or transcended to through the deathly realm, or the deathly process, or the passage, you will experience the opposite. This is why they say, well, these people that have experienced it and explored and have made documentation of it in their works, that they could make note of it to say, really, actually, your life stops, your spiritual life, you're a spirit being, and you come into this world to die so that you learn your personal self. It is just merely part of your passage of being who you are. And again, this doesn't negate why there's such suffering in the world, why things are happening the way that it is, or yet even why there's a little disincarnated entity or spirit that presents itself as a god over humankind. It's got nothing to do with that. What I'm trying to explain to you is that if you can understand that you are eternal, and that you are a spirited being, and you live within a physical vessel that is mortal to you, then you understand perhaps where the complexity really comes from. Because everything that is happening in this realm is stacked against you in one way or another. And this, I've said, is because the realm is closed. It is closed because it needs to eat off itself. This realm, as closed as it is the Ouroboros, where the snake devours its tail, where the individual devours his or her tales, the stories in which they find they can feed off from. This is what it is. Whether it's done through mainstream manipulation, whether it's done through listening to people talking, whether it's done to music, whether it's done to any and every industrial frequency that it arises. The fact remains is, as a quote stands, that you operate within a world that is not of the living. And your experience beyond that world, especially when Socrates was, let's say, committing suicide, or he was forced to commit suicide while he was drinking the poison just before he was dying, and his friends were all crying for him, and he said, well, why are you crying for me? And they said, but we're going to miss you, and you're such a very important person, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, no, you actually shouldn't be crying for me. I'm going to go home. And so, therefore, you should find out who you are while you're here. You should never forget who you are. Okay, so the quote is from Cicero's Republic, and it was the dream of Scipio. So he says, strive on indeed, and be sure that it is not you that is mortal, but only your body. For that man whom your outward form reveals is not yourself. The spirit is the true self, not that physical figure that can be pointed out by the finger. Know then that you are a god, or if a god or ruler is that which lives, feels, remembers, and forces, and which rules and governs, and moves the body over which it is set. Just as the supreme God, which they refer to here, I will call it the Great Spirit, or the eternal original creator, beyond this realm, beyond all realms, above rules this universe. End quote. The only thing that I will contradict or change or critique is the fact that they refer to you as being a god, but then that was written in the mind of the masculine conditioning to believe that if you have god status, you can do anything you want, which is not correct. Because if that was the case, why would you be here? Not so. And there are plenty of those that believe that there are gods in this realm anyway. So why do you want to be something like that when you are greater than that? When you are not man-made? Not so. And so basically that explains to you the concept of the reality in which you exist within this realm. Your reality, your nature of what you are, of who you are, of where you're intending to go, and what you're intending to experience. If you're unaware that you are not your physical vessel, then, well, then you know exactly who you are. And so it takes us to the point where the next question was asked, and there were like lots of questions. Was the person asked me how to overcome the fear during astral traveling and what is the void? And so I said that the idea of the void may pertain to the perception of what you have as a spatial element or realm through which you enter into, whereas the Greeks refer to it as the river of Styx, where you go through and pay the ferryman the gold coin, which is, figuratively speaking, the coin is your token of your experience. In other words, your memory, who you are, your treasures that you are busy creating and treasuring within your consciousness, that nothing can touch it, that you take with you. And that if you pay the ferryman would just merely present to be an element that takes you through to the other realm, or the realm in passing. As they call it, Hades, which means it's the realm of dust, and clay, which would be represented to, that is where your physical mortal consciousness would go towards. However, they do describe something extremely important where they refer to the underworld, and in the image you'll see the underworld as being the shadow of the world that we are existing within now. And while you're in awake state or conscious state, in the underworld I will interpret as what you experience when you do the implosion, when you pass over through your electrical currency through the portal in your chest, which is not your physical pump station heart, but a portal through which you do go through. Unfortunately, people who have interpreted the halls of Amenti and Thoth and all of that have completely misconstrued the understanding of what the Emerald Tablets are. And the Emerald Tablets really are that which is written and scribed within the walls of the conscious heart of understanding. That is why it is green. And it is also written so that you are particularly more aware of your deeds through love. And that is what that means. Not the physical tablets that are written down and stacked somewhere. It's why no one could ever understand it. It really is not that exhaustingly difficult to understand. Your deeds and your actions through life and love is represented and written on the walls of your experience. You will travel through the halls of Amenti if you are so fully invested in belief systems of the Egyptian information mythology. It will feel as if you do traverse through that. When you go into yourself, when you pass over through the portal, you are essentially a portal. I mean, someone's asked me once upon a time, are we not organic portals? And I'm going to say, yeah, you are. If you have your door closed, you're a completed whole being which have the power to generate a great, tremendous amount of electromagnetic energy for you to be able to propel outward, which is in and out. Is how I've been explaining all along. Now I know that there's going to be a lot of trolls that will try and reconfigure this information that I'm explaining to you, but let it be known that this is the first time this particular information is mentioned here on this channel. And I am going to ask you to please like and subscribe, because that helps, and share the information, because that helps to bring this information across, because it is very serious. However, I do leave you with a challenge that you must do this yourself. Challenge me, but explore this in your own way and see if you come up with the same conclusions as I do. There should be no fear in passing over. There should never be any fear in leaving this realm, If there is fear, if you find yourself with fear, then it means that you are still deeply invested in the material world around you, and that you still codepend upon it for it to present to you happiness and emotional conditions that you seek. It is the same type of emotional conditions that people seek from one another and with one another, so that when they do pass from one another and they leave one another, that they feel completely isolated. Which tells you then that you have been perhaps a person that have sought happiness from another person instead of cultivating it within yourself. And so I'm sharing with you that you should have zero fear in transitioning from this realm. It was a painful process in coming here. It should be painless for you. The actual act of extracting your consciousness, your spirit, and your soul from your vessel, that is painless. How you pass, well, I can't speak for you or for anyone else about that. That is your personal endeavor and your journey in which you'll experience. The space of the void or the sense, I don't want to call it even space, because it is not a space. It's not space. There's no stars, there's no universal lights or cosmology available. It is literally as if you are in a fabric of comfort. However, the trick is, and there is a trick, to determining whether and how you will experience that process is what you have done with yourself in this current reality. Have you approached and explored the depths of who you are? Have you explored the depths of your existence? Let me say this though, that the actual passing over process is quite an intricate process. But if you're new here, I will just briefly share with you the understanding, and then I will use another quote just to explain the process as well. Your physical body is connected to or holds you as a vessel within this realm, because this realm is physical. It requires a physicality to operate within it. However, you are not limited to it, as I've said. Your physical body is also made up of frequencies that interlock into one another like cogs in a wheel or in a type of mechanism. And so whereas there is this overemphasis on the silver cord when you do the astral traveling, that your astral cord goes with you. And of course this is also mentioned by various explorers and people that have written about it, authors and so on. However, my personal experience is this. The silver cord is really the electrical impulses or current that runs along your spine, your spinal cord, and it meets up with your medulla oblongata. You determine how your frequency regulates that cord or current of electrical energy. In other words, you are responsible for everything that is within you and around you and what you do. You will have to be responsible for who you are and what you do, because that is your role, your responsibility. I mean, you look after yourself when you get up in the morning and you go and brush your teeth. I mean, you do have that sense of human caring aspect. You would go and bath if you were dirty as well. And so this cord acts as a type of relay switch between yourself in your spirited being, your essence within yourself, and as you then transition or do astral traveling or whatever you want to do, especially if you're tapping into it, think of it as a type of tuning fork when you are using it in its optimum manner. However, sometimes when Kundalini Yoga has been done, and many of you have heard me say that I do not suggest that it is a good idea to do that at all. For those of you who have done it before, perhaps you have been able to do it in a much more successful manner. However, personally, I will never suggest for anyone to do that, because that is like taking an electrical cord with electricity already charged in it and shocking yourself so that you fracture your natural field open, which then allows things to come in. I mean, it's the same in the same process. You will look at you will be careful not to become ill by using the natural remedies that you would want to have within yourself to take care of yourself so that you do not become sick. Parasites, viruses, etc., etc. Those things exist, and so in the same way you will find intradimensional parasites and viruses to exist also. And so why would you not do the same for your field or your energetic field around you? Why will you not do the same for your consciousness? To do the same is to look after yourself. That is the natural caring process. That is how you scribe good deeds and kindness and caring and love on your walls of a mentee. Let's just use that buzzword, shall we? Since that's how people understand it to be these days. Yet I would just say right in the walls of the heart of understanding. Every good deed allows you to connect with yourself in a much deeper manner so that you're able to experience who you are, so that you're able to be more or less villainous towards yourself, so that you are able to essentially sit down and think on things and ponder on things. And so essentially when parasites come into the conscious field, when doing very extreme exercises, like you can tear a muscle or you can tear your energetic field by doing extreme energetic work, such as things like the Kundalini Yoga, which I do not, like I said again, I do not prescribe it to anyone at all. And if you even thought of doing it, don't do it, please. You then open yourself up to external frequencies to come in and then allocate or lie then alongside your spinal cord, which then is then used as a pole around which the serpent can curl around. There is that symbol of Mercury. Be careful of that. You can, however, remove it if you needed to by simply just using a great deal of force and help from someone or yourself, if you're capable of it, to extract it from your crown, because it comes in from the base chakra and you can then extract it from the top, as in my previous interview where it was mentioned. And so the silver cord, its purpose is, like I said, also like a gateway or a door for your vortex or that which is within you, the field within you, to align you or for you to use as a rod or a staff to guide you through the world, the worlds and world. Which takes us then to the next explanation as to what is spirit, body or soul concepts and what is consciousness and all of that. And so I'm explaining this again in a much more intricate manner, I suppose. Our spiritual body and our souls are formed as part of consciousness, which means, what is consciousness? It means that it is what we have within ourselves through which we are building constantly. So think of it as treasure or as your gifts in which you are building yourself into an existence or understanding, knowledge, and then applying it, wisdom, sacredness. And the consciousness is meant to be within each and every human being, actually, meant to be. But of course, as we know, there are not many individuals in the world that have that ability where they are able to use or utilize the consciousness, and some may not even have spirit within them. And so, as per usual, I'll say that this material is only for those who are aware of their spirit and their soul. When you pass over, your soul extracts or retracts rather into the spirit, and the spirit then retracts itself out of the vessel, your physical vessel, your body, and you then leave. That process takes time for you to incorporate all of those actions, those motions. Very much so, they describe in the works as well of Homer, like I've said, and I'm going to give you a quote here as well, is you will find to the left of the house of Hades a spring. Now Hades is the underworld, or the world of where those go to when they physically prepare themselves to leave finally. It is not a purgatorial state. Think of it as like a portal through which souls leave. It happens within you. Okay, so it's a state of where you decide, okay, I think I'm ready to go now. I've done everything I needed to do. Or if when you are deciding to, when you physically have left, that you are in that process of contemplation. It's just the moment between extracting your physical, yourself from your physical form through to the next part of the journey. And so it is described in here as that you will find to your left of the house of Hades a spring, which is what they say here, and by the side thereof standing a white cypress. And to this spring approach not near. Right. So that means that when you are in the process of the throes of passing on, you will see the spring, which is the white light, the portal of white light, because that portal of white light is something that it is a mechanism or a technology that essentially strips your soul's conscious recordings of your experiences, your memory from you. So when you do go through that white light, you are stripped from your memories, your past actions, and what is then placed inside of you is the basic personality with which you came here. So this is why it's important to avoid that left white light, which does come upon you to show you with all angelic little entities and elements to come and fetch you. If you want to come back, go through that way. If you don't want to come back, do it the other way, like I've explained. I want you to ask me about it. I'm not going to give it just for nothing. You need to ask me about the concept of it, and I will make a video on it. Otherwise, I will leave it the way that it is. I'm not going to go into details about it because I think it is sacred, and I do not want to imprint upon you an impression that you have not tested out yourself. And so they even describe this white light as a fountain or a spring, which means it's light that's blooming out, and it is white. Okay. And they say, do not approach this spring. They say, but you shall find another from the lake of memory. In other words, and they say, cold water flowing forth, and there are guardians before it. When you go in imploding upon yourself, when you go through that portal within yourself, it is a concept that you would have to explore and investigate upon yourself, within yourself, if you want to. I'm not saying you must. Then you will find, like I said, you will find the halls within this vortex, within yourself. The first thing you would find is you will never have realized how magnificent you have been until you go through that vortex within. You will never have realized it while you are in waking state, in conscious state, until you actually go through that process yourself. And only when you've experienced that process will you find what I'm saying to you. You will understand what I mean. And you will go through this process and you will find, they refer to it as cold water flowing forth, a lake of memory. You do see a field which looks like light, which is stationary, and it is cold. You get the impression it is cold because it is slow and static, and you will feel like you want to go through that, okay, rather than go through the white cypress. And that is the lake of memory. They call it the lake of memory. I'm going to call it to you as that is a field through which you will go through without having your memory stripped from you. Okay, you'll take it with you. And there are guardians before it. Guaranteed. I'm telling you right now, I saw the guardians standing there, and they're not so unreasonable. And I didn't go through. I think if I did, then I would not be here. But there is something that you would need to explain to them to let them give you the way to pass. And you have to retain who you are through this process. And this is why it's so very vital for you to understand who you are, essentially living in a realm that is simulated and is based upon the impressions upon yourself and your belief systems, and that is how it affects you directly and indirectly. Humans are their own worst enemy in terms of the ages in which we are in. It is mainly based on belief systems as such. And so they say here in this quote, say, quote, I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone. This you know yourselves to be. Which means you should know who you are. You should know that you have walked upon this realm, this material realm. That is where you were a child of the earth. As you were growing up, your feet touched the ground, the earth, in this realm, in this material realm. And you are also a child of the starry heavens, which is that which is of the highest, the most highest in your consciousness. In other words, your spirit. Not those heavens, not this earth. Internal, earthly, which is warm, comfort, care, earth, groundedness, and connectivity, as well as that which is the highest consciousness, your thoughts, the most starry of heaven. And then you say, but my race is of heaven alone. And that is where you then affirm that you are of a highest consciousness. You are a spirited being, and you have been trapped in your mortal form and vessel in this realm. What is the point of the entire exercise of coming here if you're not able to understand who you are? And let me also say this, I'm not saying that this world is a school. I'm not saying that this world is a place of lessons. I'm saying you should know that you are much more stronger than what the realm makes it out to be for you. And that once you're able to understand that, then all the bullshit that is happening in this realm is something that can fleetingly pass from you. That is what it means to divide the seas. To divide the seas means to divide that which is not of you and that which is of you, which you take with you. You divide that. You prepare yourself consciously every day since you've been here, if you've actually taken the time to do that. If you've lived a life where you had to physically, literally live from day to day, hand to mouth, or you live upon a life where you are completely on the street and you cannot live for yourself, then you will still have the chance to think internally inside here. That is where it matters the most. The world was once open. It was an open realm, which means it had an open connection to that which was an original creative awareness of a creator, or original, I call it great spirit, an original essence of the all. Okay, I don't know what else to use in man-made words to explain what I'm trying to say. And your experience was to explore and endeavor in expanding physically. That was what the role was for that race, the race to live here, the races to live here. And then the world was attacked, and others came to bring malevolent force frequencies here. It became attacked and hijacked. And while this took place, the world was closed. Those of you, or some of you know why the world became closed, because it was done deliberately. So it's not a secret that the world is a simulated world. It is. It was created to simulate, to close, to simulate an open world, so that you were still able to have the choice and the chance to leave, but at the same time to understand that the reason it got closed down was to contain the parasites that came here in the first place. And those parasites are the Orions, like I've been saying for years and years and years. And that is why the world was closed down. It's like I said, it's not a secret that this is a simulated world. It's not a hush hush, like, oh, you know, you should be careful how you say this and that. You know that the world is the way it is right now. Now I've just told you that it is. It doesn't take a brain surgeon or a scientist or an adept or a magician of arc knowledge to tell you it. But it does tell you that because it closed down, a lot of corruptions took place inside of this realm. However, another thing that I do want to bring to your attention is that once it started to take place, that's when people started focusing on things inside of this place. They just became focused on it. It's like there was a hypnosis that took place. Now, mass hypnosis of needing to worship things inside, because I suppose it is that much easier for humankind to do that. I think humanity, perhaps, and this is generally speaking, has become focused so much on that which is material, and that is what is enforcing necromancy. And necromancy, like I said when I started this video, is the study of that which is death, and it is the animation of that which is death. Frankenstein created a monster out of that man of body parts and that which is death. Eugenics, the straw man, which has now become digital, etc., etc., etc. It's just a perpetuation of the same shit. While the Orions want to perpetuate their gods to come in and take over the entire realm. It's easy for them then. It's like your body is encapsulated there where the thorn stuck into your finger. Your body encapsulated that thorn with whatever is with it, fluid, to protect the rest of the body. And everything else that's living around that area is also hurt or affected by that same thing until it's actually opened up, so that thorn can be taken out. And that is what's going on. So it's not about, so the focus needs to be upon what is within the self, within the spirit, within the awareness of who you are, as opposed to that which is around you, even if they perpetuate news feeds. What the hell? I mean, it is perpetuating the frequency so that you will radiate out of your consciousness, your physical form, food, because they're running out of food. Not you. They are running out of food. So they require hyperstimulation, hyperfixation, hyperfocus, hypermagic, hyper meta manipulation upon the conscious thoughts. What is the soul and body? What are humans actually? What are you actually? Well, the first thing to understand is, as I said, the soul is a user interface that you require to operate within this realm. Your spirit is really who you are. but you require the soul to operate for you what you require it to do, and that is to traverse in this realm. It is based on a system of light. One could call it light, and I'm not saying white light, love and light, none of that shit. I'm calling it light for what it is, because you could look at it as a light codes within the conscious form of the soul in which it operates. And beliefs and worldly events do trigger and can have a energetic reflection onto that light. Think of it as like the shape of or think of it as the lens of an eye through which you operate your reality, your realm. And whatever the eye sees, remember the eye is made up of smaller forms of light or channels of light through which things are reflected upon, and that is how you then operate, and that then projects back into you for you to reason over, think on, and operate in, and react or respond towards it. And as I've said, external events and things that are physically challenging for the material realm do trigger and create conflict within that system of light or your soul. There are those individuals that exist within this realm that have only got soul activated. So it's like those eyes that look at you in the dark, but you don't really know who it is that's looking at you. Some do not have the connection with spirit. I don't know why. Okay. I just know that they resonate, their frequency is that much different than what it would look like with a person with the spirit intact alongside the soul. When you come across people like that, understand that their purpose really is there to observe. I once thought that perhaps they were related to that which is the witnesses, or the witness to see things as it happens. But you know what they say with cameras can be hijacked as well. So be mindful who and what you come across as. And this also doesn't mean that you have to be afraid. Please, it's got nothing to do with seeing them as empty vessels either, although you can find those empty vessels, but rarely, if even, is there an entity or a person or a being that does not have a soul present. Okay, so let's just debunk that nonsense of the NPC thing. The next question was asked, why do religious people see their religious beings or icons recorded near-death experiences? Why do the people experience that? And so my answer to that is religion is based on a belief system which relies on blind faith, so that the conscious mind, through the action of supposition, which means to have faith without actually any physical proof, so that your mind will complete the rest of that image or that icon that is presented to you through a period of your subjection to that experience, through that belief system. So it is a belief system that is based on you completing the rest of that illusion of that icon, so that you are able to proceed and experience the connection. People such as the Orthodox Christians believe that people become connected to icons based on the actions of those icons. And so it is like presenting and saying that if you show a lot of kindness and you have gone through a lot of trauma or whatever, and you've managed to become stronger through it all, that you are like the saint of so and so. And so that is based on that. It is based on actions and expression through kindness, through things, through good deeds, through deeds. Okay. And then that takes us to the next important thing to understand, that because the mind completes the picture of that religious deity that is presented in faith to you. And this is not about any religion itself, but this is just overall based on the faith-based belief system, or the supposition of belief, which means to have belief in something, that you must complete the rest of the picture in your mind. And that is why the soul is so powerful, because the soul then projects an image into the consciousness, and the consciousness tries to formulate the entire or the rest of the picture. So if you're told about only a half, if you're told about a person or a deity or a being that has performed certain things, your mind will go, I wonder what this deity looks like. And I start to think about all of these attributes that I think the deity should have. You know, like, should it be a female? Should it be a male? Should it be a big mix between the two? Should it have wings? Should it have horns? Etc., etc. And that is why you will then see, in some cases, when you are in your near-death experience, those icons. And in the same process, it is different for people who are connected to family members or people that they have had a strong bond to, where they would wish for their grandmother to come and fetch them because they're scared. Because that was the last thing that they've experienced when they were still in physical form as a child, when they were afraid. So they will then conjure up that need for that impression to take place. Now, like I said before you run off, we exist. For me to explain to you why these impressions are so important is for me to explain to you that we exist, that this realm is based up or made up of subset of realms, which is, like I've always explained, as layers in a cake, in an extremely multi-tiered layered cake, but it's in the shape of an egg overall. And each of these layers are like threads of hair or piano strings that if you touch them, your impressions in your mind touch them, they reverberate the impression back at you, which can be either an impression or an oppression. Okay? And that is how some of these magicians operate, where they're able to touch on the threads of the dimensional realm in which you exist and imprint upon your consciousness the imminent fear that you will see Cthulhu rising out of the dark sea when you're standing on the beach thinking about someone or something on your holiday, for example. So what I'm saying to you is we need to be mindful of a few things. Parasites exist. Parasites are things that like to go into hosts so that it can operate for that host and feed the parasite. Parasites can be malevolent ideologies or belief systems that can corrupt the conscious thoughts. If you give enough food to it, it will come and live inside of you, like the Candida, for example, parasite or virus. Very similar to ideas that if you live in this realm, you believe that the realm is going to come crashing down on you, the sky is going to fall, on your head, or there's going to be a monster that's going to come and rapture you up like a dinosaur, like whatever monster is available in the subset of conscious thoughts of those that have been very active with their imagination. And so those things are impressions that fall upon you, which are imprinted upon you. You choose whether you are susceptible to it or not. If you accept it, that you are susceptible to it, and then you will be haunted by it. Much like how the demiurge became some entity which you find within this realm, that it does exactly, it physically exists. Or let me say, it etherically exists, much like a spirit exists out of a physical form, a ghost. And that thing is merely an impression upon a spirit that gave upon himself, herself, a belief so deeply in the doctrines that were written about it that it became manifested. Because after all, if you keep talking about the boogeyman will manifest itself for you and for those of you who believe in that same thing. And so this is why I'm saying that mankind in his herself is really subjected to a series of impressions and oppressions from the realms around the self. How are you able to function while knowing all of these things? Go within. Go into yourself, live clean. Do whatever you need to do to keep focus on your consciousness, to keep understanding and learning and working and exploring things deeper and deeper inside of you. You are a well of infinite knowledge, which you perhaps have not tapped into, or maybe you have. So, I could perhaps continue with all of the questions that have been asked, but if you really want to look at all the material that I have answered on these questions, it's in my last post that I've made on my website, and my website is, the link is provided for you. I've just touched on those very important keys that I felt was very much needed to be discussed. Perhaps there are other things that you've wanted me to explore and investigate with you. And so I'm going to leave this with you, and I thank you for your time and for your interest and your support. For those of you who've been with me for so long, thank you very much for that, and I love you for that. And look after yourselves. Until next time. Bye.